This is Liz Loves Science, and today we're going to talk about life. So we're going to talk about what something needs to do in order to be classified as being alive, different forms of life and how they differ, and why they are classified as being alive. So first of all, what does something need to be able to do in order for it to be called alive? So we have this little mnemonic, which is Mrs. Gren. And these are the 7 things that anything that's alive must be able to do. So what do these things stand for? So the M is movement. Everything that's alive is able to move. R is respiration. So that's taking in oxygen and giving out carbon dioxide. Larger animals do it by breathing, but smaller life forms have different mechanisms for respiration, but it's something that all life forms must be able to do. S is sensitivity. So that can be sensitivity to touch, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to temperature. There's a whole range of things that you can be sensitive to. G is growth. And it's fairly obvious what growth means. It means getting bigger. So anything that's alive must be able to grow. The second R is reproduction. So this can be cellular reproduction as well as producing a whole new organism for more complex life like animals and plants. E is excretion. So this means getting rid of your waste products. And that's closely linked to respiration in some respects because it's getting rid of carbon dioxide. It's also getting rid of waste that we produce through food, which brings us on to N, which is nutrition. So, anything that's alive does these 7 things. And we're going to now draw a tree of life and talk about what different life forms they are and how they carry out these 7 things. Briefly, I'm not going to go into huge detail. I'm going to do some more tutorials on how different life forms work. But here is our tree of life. And the first branch we're going to think about is this branch here, and that's bacteria. Lots of people think of bacteria as being the bad guys, things that make you ill, but actually that's only a minority of them. Bacteria are the most abundant life form on Earth, and they make up a lot of the soil. They're on surfaces, they're on our bodies, they're inside our bodies. Quite a lot of human digestion is actually carried out by bacteria, and so they're vastly important. They're also really important for biotechnology. So a lot of research is done using bacteria because they're really simple organisms. So they're simple to manipulate, they're simple to grow, and they're simple to destroy once you've finished with them. So the technical word for bacteria is prokaryotes. And this means pro, before, and karyote refers to the nucleus. So these don't have a true nucleus in the way that other cells have, and so they're simple and they reproduce really quickly. So do they move? Yes, they do. They might not grow legs and run around the lab, they're easy to contain, but they swim around and they have specific body parts which allow them to swim in a liquid media, so they do move. Do they respire? Yes. They need oxygen, they take in oxygen, give out carbon dioxide. That's respiration. Are they sensitive? Again, yes they are. They are very sensitive to temperature. If you've got a bacteria that's used to living in a human body, then they will grow best at 37 degrees centigrade. If you drop that temperature or raise that temperature slightly, they will grow less fast. So that's showing sensitivity. Do they grow? Well, I've talked about the growth of bacteria. They multiply and divide, which is both reproduction and growth. Excretion, yes, they excrete stuff, so they take in nutrients, which is nutrition, which if you're growing them in a lab environment or in the flask that you grow them in, and they give out waste products. So bacteria meet all of these criteria, so they can be classed as being alive. And there's lots of different types of bacteria, which we'll talk about another time. But that is the first stem of a tree of life. So the next stem we're going to do is plants. It's quite difficult to write going down, but never mind. So plants, do they move? Yes they do. Do they respire? Yes, plants are often thought of as photosynthesizing, so taking in carbon dioxide and using light to make sugars. But that requires light, so what do they do at night? They break down the sugars that they've made using oxygen and give out carbon dioxide, and that is the definition of respiration. So yes, plants do respire. Are they sensitive? Yeah, some plants are sensitive to touch. You can get the little ferny type plants that if you touch them they close the leaves up. The Venus flytraps close up when they're touched. They're also sensitive to light. If you have a plant growing in a windowsill, for example, which is only ever lit from one side, it will grow towards the light. So they are sensitive to a number of different things. Growth, yes, plants grow. Reproduction, yes, a lot of plants produce seeds. Some plants reproduce through making runners, and on a cellular level they need to be able to reproduce in order to be able to grow, to make more cells, to make more plant. Excretion, yes, they give out carbon dioxide as a waste product. They also give out oxygen as a waste product when they're photosynthesizing. And nutrition, so as I said before, they make sugars during the daylight, and that isn't just so that we can have a nice sweet strawberry or a nice sweet tomato. The nutrition, the photosynthesis making the sugars, is because the plant needs those sugars to nourish itself overnight. So plants do all of these things. So plants aren't prokaryotes, they're much more complicated, and in fact everything else on the tree of life is. And so these things are called eukaryotes. And that means with a true nucleus, and Plants, most of them are green, and they photosynthesize. Which is necessary for them to grow, but they are definitely alive. And as with bacteria, we've got a number of different branches of the plant kingdom. So we're going to move over to this end of the tree of life now, and we're going to look at animals. So animals are probably the life form that most obviously follows Mrs. Gren. So animals move, we can move our arms, we can move our legs, we respire, we're sensitive, we grow, we reproduce, we excrete, and we eat. So animals are definitely alive. These are also eukaryotes, and again, animal life can be divided into many different branches. So our last one is something that fits in the middle in between plants and animals. And these are fungi. So, like bacteria, they are also hugely important in terms of industry and biotechnology. They are important in brewing, and they're important in food production because it's fungi or yeast that makes bread rise and that makes the alcohol in the alcoholic drinks. So, do these move? Yes, similar to bacteria, they can swim in a liquid. Do they respire? Yes, but a lot of the way that we use fungi, particularly yeast, but mushrooms are also fungi, so a lot of the way we use them is using anaerobic respiration, but it's still respiration, and they also respire aerobically, so they take in oxygen, give out carbon dioxide. Are they sensitive? Yes, again, like bacteria, they can sense different temperatures and will grow best at their optimum temperature. They can also sense acidity, the amount of nutrients that's available with them, and that kind of thing. So they are sensitive. Do they grow? Yes, they grow by cell division. Do they reproduce? Yes, again, that's cell division. They excrete, they produce waste materials, and in the case of brewer's yeast and baker's yeast growing anaerobically, that's alcohol. So it's interesting that alcohol also makes bread rise, but it's more the carbon dioxide that they produce that makes the bread rise. But there is alcohol produced in bread yeast. Where had we got to? Sensitivity. Growth, reproduction, yes. Excretion, yes, they produce alcohol. And nutrition. They need to be able to absorb nutrients, so they absorb through their cell membranes, and they use that to grow and to make more of themselves. And again, fungi have a number of different branches. So we've got mushrooms, and yeast, both of which have a number of subcategories amongst those. So all of these branch off numerous times, but they're all alive. And an interesting thing about fungi is, as I say, inside the cells, these three have different specialist parts to the cells. And we call those parts organelles. So they're like little organs. So if you think about humans, we have organs, we have eyes that help us to see, we have brains which do a specific job, we have a liver that does a specific job. The cells themselves have little organelles, and they allow the cell, each different organelle allows the cell to do a specific job. So plants have organelles specifically for photosynthesis. Some fungi do photosynthesize, but most don't. Animals don't. So that's one of the big things that categorises plants from animals, is plants have these organelles that enable them to photosynthesize. So fungi are more closely related to animals in some respect than they are to plants, but then there's other aspects of them that are more closely related to plants. And we're going to go into a bit more cellular biology and discuss how these different kinds of cells work another time. But for today, I just wanted to tell you how life was divided, or the first divisions of life, and each of those is then subdivided to make what we think of as being this tree, and all of the things that living cells and living entities have to be able to do to be classified as being alive. So we'll just think of one more example, which is something that is often thought of as being alive but isn't, and that's a virus. So viruses are not alive. They are not part of this tree of life. And why aren't they part of this tree of life? Well, viruses can't do anything for themselves. They need to be inside a cell in order to do that. So they can't move for themselves, although they can move, because if you've got a cold and you sneeze, your cold virus particles will be propelled out of your body and through the air. But they're not moving on their own. It's our bodies that make them move. They don't respire at all. They're not particularly sensitive. Maybe to some things, but not in the same way as life. Things that are alive are sensitive. They can't grow. Do they reproduce? They kind of do, but they don't do it on their own. So what a virus does is it infects a cell, and it's basically a little capsule of DNA. That DNA goes into the cell, and it uses the cell's own organelles, its own internal machinery, to reproduce itself. So although you get one virus in you, and unless your body deals with it, you end up with 10, 20, 1,000, 10,000, whatever viruses. It's the cells of our body that's doing the reproduction, not the virus itself. And they don't need to eat, and they don't need to excrete. Which is why the nutrition bit is why viruses can, we refer to it as living, but why they can remain viable for a long time. So viruses are not part of this tree of life, but they are interesting in their own right, and we'll talk another time in more detail about viral biology. So I hope this has been useful to you, and I hope it's valuable. So if you've benefited from this, and if you like what I do, like my video, subscribe to my channel, and if there's something particular that you would like me to cover, then please leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. Thank you. Bye.